Seems like the summer seems to be the time that we really will hope to find a new rhythm of rest, a new rhythm. Maybe we've got some vacations planned or some schedule changes. What's been interesting, though, as I've talked to many of you, it doesn't seem like any of your lives slow down in the summer. It seems like there's just new and different activity, that this sense of finding rest is still kind of a pursuit for us that tends to be a struggle. I've even noticed, and we said this last time, and I actually even read an article this week talking about when you go on vacation with little children. Uh, I'm already hearing they're seeing the head shake. It's not a rest, so quit pretending like it's a rest. What you're doing when you go on vacation with children is you're creating memories. So just acknowledge that you're creating memories, and maybe you can't wait to get back to work so you can actually get some rest from your previous family vacation. But we put so much emphasis in, in, in a sense of if we can only get some rest, if I can only get that weekend away, if we can only go to that place. Last week we said maybe it's for you, it's that mountain cabin overlooking the stream or the beach, watching the water kind of come up on the sand. Whatever it is that you think is going to give you rest changes our scenery, but it really never changes our circumstances. I don't know if you've thought about that before. That sometimes the things that are causing us to be tired, or maybe anxious, or maybe fearful, they don't go away just because we changed our scenery, just because we have something different to look at or somewhere different to go. That's kind of that feeling that happens when your vacation is about to end and you thought, yeah, this trip, this is going to be the one that is going to solve all of my problems. And I like to say I typically come back from vacation tired, sunburnt, and broke. And I think those are typically not the things I was looking forward to on the way. But those changes in places never really change our circumstances. Have you noticed that it seems like as a group of people, not us of course, but other people, those people, really struggle with anxiety, really struggle being anxious, really struggle being fearful? I know none of us are like that, but statistically it seems like a lot of other people are. They're wrestling with a sense of fear, of anxiousness. Sometimes that fear of anxiousness kind of flows out of their lives, not ours, of their lives, like a little bit of anger, short-tempered, maybe a little bitter, a little bit. It seems like people are carrying around some anxiousness, and I think anxiousness might just be the professional clinical word. They're carrying around some fear with them, and maybe it's fear about the future. Maybe it's fear about children, adult children, younger children, fear about health, fear about finances, or maybe it's about fear of the state of the world right now. It seems like so many people feel a sense of fear and anxiousness that's consuming them every day, and yet we still feel like if we could just get the weekend away or the week's vacation in July, that all of that's going to be. But the reality is, those parts of life don't change just when we change our view. But this morning, I want us to look at Psalm 46 together. As we look at what it means to find our rest, I want us to look at Psalm 46. It might be familiar to some of you before. Maybe you've heard it before or read it before. If other people around you are dealing with fear and anxiety about the future and anger and uncertainty, if there's anybody around you that feels like the very ground is shaking beneath their feet all the time, I think Psalm 46 was written for people like that. maybe even people like us. So in Psalm 46, if you would follow along with me, it says it's for the choir director, a song of the descendants of Korah. It says here to be sung by soprano voices. So it tells us this was a song to be sung. Our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble, surge. A river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos, and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders, and the earth melts. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Come see the glorious works of the Lord. See how he brings destruction upon the world. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. God, thank you. Thank you for the good gift of your word. Thank you for Psalm 46. God, as we look today, help us to see this psalm the way you would have us to. Help us to change the way it sees ourselves, our circumstances, those around us. And God, we do. Help us to sit under the authority of all that your word teaches. God, may your Spirit give us understanding. In your glorious name, amen. Psalm 46, it's interesting. It's to think about what are the things that we see. What are the things that we see in the text? This is typically a conversation we have on Tuesday nights when we get together. We'll look at a psalm like this. We'll look at a passage, and we'll just talk about what we see. We'll talk about observations. We've got a list of things that we're looking for. But as we look at this, like we said, it's a song. It's for the choir director. It's to be sung by soprano voices. So we have a song in front of us, and that's maybe the thing that will help us figure out maybe the structure and the shape of it. So as we begin to ask questions, what do we have here? What are we looking at? What do we see in this particular psalm? We see a song that seems to be broken down in two stanzas. Almost like a good song has two stanzas and a refrain to it. Not like a country song that's three chords and the truth, but this, has a structure and a stanza. And we see those stanzas. Look in verse 7. It seems like as the song is introduced at the beginning, the first stanza goes down to verse 7, because we have this statement here, the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. And the reason I think that's the conclusion of the first stanza is then we see that show up again in verse 11, like this is the second stanza. So as the song has been written with a first stanza and a second stanza, the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. If that's the refrain that keeps getting repeated, that's going to tell me something about what the songwriter wants me to know. Those are the refrain of the stanza. So that's maybe what they want me to know. And then we see some other things as we look at it and say, okay, what do we see in this song, basically? We see these little breaks, and your Bible might include different words like Selah might be one translation, or interlude is another. This particular translation I'm looking at, the New Living, has interlude right after verse 3, right after verse 7, and then at the end of 11. So we have two stanzas marked by a refrain, and we have these three kind of interludes. Now, I was trying to look this up to say, how do we best understand these interludes? Just think guitar solo. Okay, maybe not guitar solo, but it's a time where there was a break in the song. And for us, maybe these would be good points for us to stop and reflect on what we had just read or what we had just heard. I thought about that because we see these a lot in the Psalms. Maybe as you're reading a particular psalm, and I would strongly encourage you to, I think a wonderful way to improve our prayer life and our devotional life is to read the Psalms. The Psalms are the prayer book of Scripture. That's why we spend some time thinking about finding our rest and how we pray, and all these things get displayed. We get the authentic picture of God's people pouring their hearts out to God in prayer and song in the book of Psalms. So I would strongly encourage you to spend some time in the Psalms, even devotionally, as you begin your day or throughout your day or at the end of your day. And when you see interlude, see that as an opportunity to press the pause button and say, the person who wrote this song wants me to pause here and reflect on what I just read. The person who wrote this is having me push a pause button here that I might reflect on the words that I have just sung or just heard sung. So as we look at this, again, we've got a song in front of us. It's got 2 stanzas, 1 through 7, and 8 through 11, marked off by this theme of the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us, the God of Israel is our fortress. And then we've got these 3 interludes after 3, 7, and 11 that point to these pause breaks that allow us to let the message sink in that we have just sung and just read together. When we start at the beginning of this psalm and we think about this first stanza, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. It's interesting how that almost serves like a topic or title of this entire psalm, because that fits with the refrains that we noticed. That idea is God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. So that theme even begins in verse 1, that our God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. Verse 2, we kind of get the problem that we're facing. If we are so sure of verse 1, then we will not run into the fear problem in verse 2. Some of you have a linking word there like therefore or so. So we will not fear. That seems to be the problem. Okay, so why is it that we need to be continually reminded that God is our refuge and strength, that He is the Lord of heaven's armies among us, He is our fortress? Why do we need to know that? So that we will not fear. We won't fear when the earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. We won't fear when the oceans roar and foam and the mountains tremble as the waters surge. We won't fear, jump down to verse 6 with me, when the nations are in chaos and their kingdoms crumble. See, the first thing that I'm noticing in this stanza is that this call not to fear is a reminder for you and I about the things that crumble and the things that don't. As a matter of fact, some of your translations might use the same word here, the idea of toppling. Mountains are toppled into the sea. Kingdoms topple. Verse 5 tells us what does not. Verse 5 says, God dwells in that city, it cannot be destroyed. Some of your translations might say, it cannot crumble, it cannot topple. So that the picture of what you and I are reminded here to be true in this first stanza is I don't need to fear, because I can know what crumbles and what does not. Everything you and I touch and experience every day will one day crumble and fall. I know that's hard for us to think about. We feel like things are going to be the same and last forever and endure for eternity. When you buy a new car, you hope that endures for eternity. As you know, it does not. It's going to end up in the shop. It's going to need repair. It's going to need replacing. Everything crumbles. Especially, I don't know if any of you have ever experienced the sort of natural disaster that comes from a flood or from a hurricane or from a fire. But when everything you thought was always going to be there is now gone, that can be an overwhelming sense of fear. A lot of people spend a lot of their time worried about the nations that are in chaos. A lot of people put a lot of hope and trust in the way governments are led and nations are organized. And yet throughout history, every one crumbles. The writer of the psalm here wants us to know that we do not need to fear because we know what crumbles and what does not. We know that where God dwells cannot be destroyed. The world may crumble around you. The very ground that you're standing on might not be there tomorrow. The kingdoms and nations around the world that people put their confidence in may not be there tomorrow. But where the Lord dwells cannot be destroyed. So this first stanza, I really feel like it tells us what do I know to be true. And then the second stanza, I really feels like is answering the question why I know it's true. So if 1 through 7 is what I know to be true, then 8 to 11 is why I know it's true. That I don't need to fear because I know that where God dwells, in verse 5, God dwells in that city. It cannot be destroyed. From the very break of day, God will protect it. Even though everything around us might crumble, I know that where God dwells cannot be destroyed. The second stanza almost points to, well, why do I know that's true? There's an invitation at the beginning of verse 8 that says, "Come see the glorious works of the Lord. See how he brings destruction upon the world. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire." Those things, those elements of war that those nations have put their confidence in, their military might, their power, their symbols of strength and protection, are snapped and burnt. It's a powerful picture of who God is in verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. Almost like you better knock it off. You better stop. Cease. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. Thinking back, what are the things that crumble and what are the things that don't? I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. So as much as I know I don't have to fear the future because I know what crumbles and what doesn't, I can look to the power and the presence of God to know what I know to be true. Those seem to be the stanzas that the songwriter is pointing us to, 1 through 7 and 8 through 11. But with that then, we see this idea, again, going back from the first sentence and the refrain, that the power and presence of God provides rest in the chaos. Doesn't say there's not chaos. Doesn't say chaos can be avoided. But this psalm reminds us that the power and presence of God provides rest in the chaos. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. You know, when verse 4 talks a little bit about the city, it's interesting to think back that as much as this is a song and songs use figurative language, that there would have been a fortress that would have been in their hearts and minds. That for the people of God at this time, they would have looked to the fortress that David captured from the Jebusites, that became the fortress that became a part of Jerusalem. So when they're singing about a fortress, when they're talking about how he is there among them in the sacred home where the Most High dwells, not only are they seeing the place that God dwells, but they're thinking about that fortress on that hill in Jerusalem where David the king dwelled, that seemed impenetrable, that seemed like it couldn't be affected by the chaos around it. So here's what I'd like us to do. I'd like us to look back now at these stanzas and think about these reflection points. We have 3 reflection points. We have 1 through 3, we have 4 through 7, and 8 through 11. These interludes, these opportunities to Selah and to remember, I'd like us just to take a moment and reflect on what it is that the psalmist is having us sing together here. The first one is that because the power and presence of God provides rest in the chaos, you and I can rest from fear. I really think that's what the psalmist is trying to help us to see. You and I can rest from fear. We will not fear because we know this is true. Because of what I know and what I know to be true, you and I can find rest from fear. Our confidence is not even in the ground that we walk on. Our confidence is not even in the nations that support us. Our confidence is in the Lord Most High, who dwells in the city that cannot be destroyed. So you and I can rest from fear. I think you and I probably need to remember that more often than we do. If I'm honest and I think about maybe how we spend our weeks, I bet we spend more time thinking and focusing and being afraid of the fear, of the chaos, of the unknown, than we do reminding ourselves, because of who God is in His power and presence, that you and I don't have a reason to fear. Maybe we need stronger reminders every day about what we don't need to be afraid of. I was thinking a lot this week about this. Who is the first person who speaks to you in the morning? Who is the first person that speaks into your life in the morning? You know, for me, sometimes it's you know, for a lot of people I know it's whatever scrolling social media news update they might have received overnight that they're looking at, which might just increase a sense of fear and anxiousness. For some people, it's the first kind of interaction they have with world news or local news or sometimes even news of the weird, we might say, that we find on social media. Sometimes those are the first voices that speak to us in the morning, and many times they promote fear. Many times they promote fear and anxiousness and anger. But you know, there's another voice that's not very good either that speaks to me the first thing in the morning. And you know who that one is? That's me. That's my thoughts. And I don't know about you, but nobody talks to me more than I do. And sometimes the words I say to myself are anxious, are fearful, are frustrating, are angry. Sometimes I can talk myself out of sleep even when I'm absolutely exhausted. I need to find somebody else to speak to me the first thing in the morning. I need to find somebody else to speak to me in the middle of the night when I can't go back to bed. Verse 6, God's voice thunders and the earth melts. I love Psalm 29 If you've ever read Psalm 29, make a note about it and maybe reflect on it this afternoon. Psalm 29 talks about the voice of the Lord, the power of the voice of the Lord. Hey, what if this week, you said, you know what? I'm gonna take a rest from fear. And by doing that, I'm gonna make sure that the first voice that speaks to me in the morning is the Lord's voice. I'm going to change whatever rhythm or pattern that I've been in, or rut might be another word for that. I'm going to change whatever that is because I am tired of fighting fear and anger and anxiousness. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure the first voice I hear in the morning is the Lord's. I can do that by reading a psalm like this. If you'd like, I know next week we're going to read Psalm 62 together. What if every day this week the first thing you did was just read Psalm 62? Just so the first voice that you hear in the morning is the Lord's. Even if you're up in the middle of the night and you cannot calm your anxious heart, and you're thinking and worrying about what's next or who's going to take care of that or how that problem's ever going to be solved or how we're going to... What if you took a rest from fear and again, just read Psalm 62? Now, you don't have to do Psalm 62. There's 150 Psalms for you to choose from. There's 66 books in the Bible for you to hear the voice of the Lord. But what if we took a rest from fear and recognize that the first voice that speaks to us in the morning, in the middle of the night, or in those anxious moments should be the Lord's? Because that's the second thing. I mean, we're reflecting on that in verses 1 through 3, that we can rest from fear. Verses 4 through 7 tell us that we can rest from that because of God's presence. There's a contrast here between the world falling apart and a river. The oceans are roaring and foaming in 3, in 4. There's a river that brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in the city. It cannot be destroyed. From the break of day, God will protect it. God's presence with us. Now, if you know Jesus Christ, if you have put your faith and trust in him, the Bible has a wonderful gift to remind us of, and that you have received the presence of the Holy Spirit living inside you. God's presence is now with you. He is the abiding presence of God in the believer. You don't go anywhere that his presence doesn't go. There is not a time that you wake up early in the morning or in the middle of the night that his presence is not with you if you are a follower of Jesus Christ. The Spirit dwells in you. His presence is with you always. Even when everything around us is raging, we know God is our fortress because his presence is with us. As much as we know that when everything shakes and we should be in fear that God is our refuge, I want us to see in verses 4 through 7 that when everything rages, God is our fortress. Verses 8 to 11 give us another pause point. We've got a pause point for the rest from fear, from the resting in God's presence. This invitation in 8 through 11 to come and see, come and experience the glorious works of the Lord points to the very power of God, that we can find rest in God's power. He is the one that causes wars to end. He is the one that can bring destruction. He is the one who is sovereign over all creation. Hey, when we prayed, we remembered in Mark where Jesus demonstrated his authority over creation. We know that was a way that Mark was helping us to see that Jesus was truly God. His authority over creation to tell the winds and the waves to stop. The very picture of who God is demonstrated in his absolute and supreme power over his creation. He brings destruction on the world. He causes the wars to end. He destroys things that people believe will put their power. And look at what he says in 10. I mean, this whole song so far has been talking about God, talking about who he is. We get God speaking in verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honored by every nation. I will be honored throughout the world. The very power of God allows us to find rest in him. Even when everything around us feels like it's pressing in, that there's no hope, that we're being surrounded on every side, we know that it is the very power of God that delivers us, and he will be exalted. I can imagine if you're like me or like other people in those times of fear and anxiousness. Does anybody remember those old movies where somebody would be kind of hysterical and they would kind of grab them and shake them and smack them across the face to kind of bring them back to reality? I wonder if sometimes we look like that to God. I wonder if sometimes when we're experiencing fear and anxiousness and anger, and it is so removed from the power and presence of who he is, and the call, he just wants to kind of to grab us by the shirt a little bit and kind of go, hey, come back, wake up, snap out of it, be still, knock it off. Know that I am God. You're worried about the nations? I'm going to be honored over every nation. You're worried about the world around you? I will be honored throughout the world. You can find rest in the God who is all powerful over all creation. So whatever feeling is pressing in on you, God is to be exalted because of his great power. When it feels like everything is raging around you, God is our fortress in his presence. When it feels like the fear of everyday life is raging and there is no end, when everything is shaking around you, God is our refuge. God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. The Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Again, knowing these things, what I know and what I know is true does not eliminate all danger in our lives. It does not. It does not change that. But what it does do is remind us of who God is as our refuge and strength, even in the face of difficult circumstances. Even in the face that may cause us fear and anxiety, we don't need to fear. We will not fear in verse 2. Why? Because of who God is as our refuge and strength, and because he is with us. Is there a fear that's driving you right now? Is there a fear that's getting you up early in the morning and keeping you up in the middle of the night? Is there an anxiousness maybe related to something going on with you? Something going on with those adult kids? Something going on with people or jobs or finances? Is there a sense of anxiousness? And maybe we should ask those around you if that anxiousness is starting to show up in a little bit of anger. But is there something like that you are being driven by right now? What would it look like? What would it look like to incorporate some moments to be still this week? Whether it's the hand across the face to get our attention or the grabbing of our shirt to wake us up. What would it look like to have some be still and trust God moments this week? I've already suggested maybe being aware of the first person who speaks to you in the morning. Maybe setting up our week to say, you know what, I want the Lord's voice to be the first voice that speaks to me this morning. I want the Lord's words to be the one that I'm remembering when I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm consumed with anxious thoughts. I want be still and trust moments. Because I can read a psalm like this just like you can. And I can see that the psalmist clearly wants me to see that the Lord of heaven's armies is here among us. The God of Israel is our fortress. I have a God who is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble, and so do you. God, I pray that we will remember that, and we will look to His voice, and we will hear from Him. We will rest from fear. We will rest in God's presence with us as believers, and we will rest in His mighty power. Would you pray with me? God, help us to rest in you. God, there are so many things that pull us away from you. There's so many things that cause us to be angry and anxious. There's so many things that we look to besides you to give us rest that never provide the real rest that you do. Because they're not you. They're not your presence. They're not your power. And they still leave us with an overwhelming sense of fear and dread. God, I pray that we would find our rest in you, that we would remember together, even as we've gathered today for worship, that we would remember together that you are the one who is over all and in all and through all. You are the one who is present with us through the work of your Spirit. You are the one who has reconciled us to yourself through the work of Jesus Christ. You are the one who causes us not to fear, even in those times when it feels like everything in our lives is spinning completely out of control. But help us to remember what we know and what we know to be true. Give us moments every day where you are the voice that we hear as you speak to us through the beauty of your word. May our lives be conformed to the beauty and the glory and the comfort and the safety and the security and the confidence that come from you and from you alone. In your glorious name.